Meeting, December 17th. Lynn, has the meeting been properly posted?
Yes, we have.
Thank you. This would be the opportunity for citizens to address us if they wish, but we have none and we have no bright lights. Action items, approval of policy minutes from our November board meeting. By the way, I should have mentioned Corey is not able to be here tonight. He's not feeling well. Diane?
I so move to approve the policy minutes from the November meeting.
And I will second that, and I have no adjustments. Do you?
I have none.
Thank you.
So we will vote. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. We have 2-0, Lynn. Okay, the next policy action item that was on the agenda, policy 8462, child abuse and neglect. We're going to table that. We're still working with the attorneys on getting some wording that we would like to use. So that will be moved out till our next meeting. Then we do have 3 discussion items this evening. Public participation at board meetings, and let me get down to that one. That is, 0167.3, and we brought this up a month or 2 months ago, just to begin discussion on whether there's things in here we want to change.
So we,
Some options, right?
yep, so if you look at the back under options, it's in bold print. It's on the last page of the proposed policy language. Option 1B, it's what the current policy says. Any district resident having a legitimate interest in the actions of the board may participate during the public portion of a meeting. This is the area that had some discussion at both committee and at the whole board meetings. Where, are we going to limit our public comment to district residents? Are we going to expand that to, anybody who wants to come in and speak? At the last committee meeting, we talked a little bit about, who does the board represent, who elects the board, and who should then have access to address the board. So we've done some kind of background work on that, and there was a feeling among the board that they wanted to be able to hear from any citizen who wanted to make a comment about school district business or any business for that matter. So the option 2, then, you can see any citizen having a legitimate interest in the actions of the board may participate during the public portion of the meeting. So, the idea of actions of the board, it doesn't talk about the item being agendized. It could really be anything that would be in the scope of a school district, and it's not limited to a Waukesha resident or a Waukesha school district resident, so it does open it up to anybody who comes in. Option 3, any district resident having a legitimate interest in the actions of the board may participate during the public portion of a meeting. So that would be the public session. So that would be any district resident. So that would be any voter and taxpayer in the school district of Waukesha could come in and participate during that section of the meeting. And then any citizen who wants to participate, this gets into the idea of having 2 items. So a public comment and then more or less an open mic. And then any citizen may comment only on items agendized on the board agenda. So the idea of this is anybody who is a resident of the school district of Waukesha who has an interest in anything that the school board has, and we could parse this out, would be able to come in and make public comment on whatever topic. Be it agendized or be it not agendized. They could come in and speak something specific as the budget adoption or something as broad as a social issue that exists, in the greater community or the greater state. That is a person who states their address, and that address falls within the boundary of the school district of Waukesha. The second area then is any citizen of presumably the state of Wisconsin, because I don't foresee anybody coming nationally, but they could come into the board and could speak only on items that are agendized on that board meeting. So for instance, our board functions with arms, the committee arms. So anything that is agendized then, any citizen could speak to. And so if that is, using the middle school schedule as an example, if there are teachers who want to come in and they don't live in Waukesha and they want to speak to specific business on the agenda, they could come in and do so regardless of where they live. This is a little bit limiting, but it also does keep the open mic session of the board meeting tight to the topics at hand. Using the example that's been provided about the two individuals who spoke on having SROs or private security. There was some interest among board members about allowing individuals who have an area of expertise to speak on a topic that the board was addressing. That could then provide that level of expertise and information so the board could make that decision, if that's what the committee and then the board so chooses to do. I share that as some examples. Boards have a lot of options on how to deal with public comment.
Let me try and clarify
Sure.
with a question.
Yep.
Two different things. Under the item, on items agendized on the board agenda, agendized as action and or discussion?
Anything that's listed on there, somebody could come in and address the minutes. Somebody could come in and address the
So that's open.
topics from F and
Open
F.
based on what's on that piece.
Anything that is listed on that agenda. So tonight, any citizen could come in and speak during public comment on our minutes, on child abuse and neglect, on public participation at board meetings, on our agenda, on the eligibility of resident or non-resident students. So anybody could come in and speak to those things.
The other
But a citizen of Waukesha, the school district of Waukesha, a resident of the district, could come in and they could speak at the policy committee on the staff ethics policy, for instance. It's not
Right.
agendized, but it's anything. They could also come in and speak generally on school safety if they wanted to this committee, because that's a topic that's of interest to them. They're a resident of the district and they could speak to that.
The other word question I have on here is the word citizen a generic type of a citizen as opposed to a United States citizen?
We could change that to any person if we wanted to be so open that, if you were here visiting from
I'm not eager to change it. I'm just trying, I just happen to think of this as it's an issue. I don't know if it's an issue or not. Maybe with a small c, maybe it doesn't matter. I don't know.
Yeah,
And maybe probably should be a small c. It would be the only thing that I would say is make it a lowercase c.
It is, up here it is not, is
Yeah,
it?
I'd say a capital C.
Yep.
I was thinking, just brainstorming how to change this from after our last discussion at the school board meeting, stakeholder. So what's a generic word that you can use that anybody would have an interest in successful public schools? There'd be a stakeholder. But I think citizen is fine. That's as good a word as any. I'd like to speak to the fact that I think that we've, especially at FNF, in the recent past, have had people come forward and bring up issues that we didn't have on the agenda that we then started pursuing and researching and, found a need to be able to address some concerns. And I'd hate to say that it has to be on the agenda, that they would come and say, okay, you can't talk about this, something that you should look into, as their way to be able to bring up concerns. I like the broader, any citizen having a legitimate interest in the actions of the board, that's stakeholder, that you're defining it perfectly, may participate during the public portion of a meeting. And I like that wording. I like that a lot.
Yep. And so option B then could be the option that we choose to, the committee chooses to go with. I'm certainly comfortable with any of the options. I'm here just to make sure that I can provide whatever insights. Under this, just, to use as an example, that would give me then 3 minutes to stand in front of the board and address any issues that I want to, however I want to address them. And then, because even given my position, my speech then would be protected at the microphone as a citizen.
Well, stakeholder, that has a
Right.
legitimate interest in what happens in this district,
Absolutely. And so, from that standpoint, I guess I offer that as some perspective. I know that there's been some comment on having unlimited participation at the meetings, and
That's another subject I would,
the board as a whole, or the president, we've got some language down there, has the ability. So we propose that either the board president or committee chair can unilaterally make the decision to let the public comment go on beyond 30 minutes. That's one option that we can choose. The other option is that the board as a whole could vote to extend it beyond. So say we've got a hot topic and 100 people show up and everybody's given 2 or 3 minutes to speak. I know that the board as a whole would want to listen to those citizens. You guys are great as a board, but that may not be the venue to do so. And then the board as a whole could vote to limit comment to 30 minutes, but then also could schedule a listening session where all you're doing and the sole purpose of the evening is to hear from the citizens on, cell phone towers or artificial turf on the football field, or you pick the topic, they could come in.
Well, you mentioned that to me in discussion one day, and that one is attractive to me for that reason. I do not look forward to having a board meeting that goes on till midnight because of something like that. I would rather have it addressed in a separate meeting.
And I just to give some perspective, I mean, if the board, which has been very good, gives people 2 to 3 minutes, generally 3 minutes to speak, and 150 people show up, that's been the number that's been provided as an example. That's 450 minutes. That comes out to 7.5 hours of comment. And our board meetings start at 7 p.m. We get to public comment generally by 7:30. So sometime at about 2 in the morning, we're going to be carrying into general school business. And just as a matter of practice, any administrator who is at that meeting, we're expected to be to work the next morning by the time business starts. And I would assume that board members who also have jobs have that same obligation. The business of the school district is not going to stop but you could have a public hearing where you listened and you could set parameters around that. A lot of districts will give them, 60 seconds to 90 seconds for comment, and they'll listen to all 150 people. And when they do that, then you've got one topic, it is just to listen. And so I would encourage that be added.
Yeah, I would too, because
Sorry, Lynn.
now you have unilaterally by the board president or committee chair, they could do that unilaterally as well as having a board vote on it.
Right.
And
And we propose unilaterally only because, I'll use Joe as an example. I mean, if we get, 12 people who come to the board meeting and Joe says you get 3 minutes to speak and 12 people speak, it's 36 minutes, right? I would not say that it's practical for the board to shut down the last 2 people. You would want that flexibility. But if 100 people showed up, I wouldn't also want the board president or committee chair to have the lone authority to say no. That would make that person wildly unpopular when, we've got a good board and we've got good board members. So
I like the idea that unilaterally, that they can it just flows. It doesn't have to be, let's stop and vote because we're going beyond 30 minutes right now. That it's just like a intuitive call in terms of being able to handle that.
Yeah.
But if there's 100 people who want to talk, then you may at that 30-minute point, then ask. A lot of times their points have been made. That they would be willing to just drop off at that point. But I think that gives the leeway at 30 minutes in. Do we extend to the next 50 people who'd like to talk, or do we hold a public meeting to give them a chance to be able to speak at a different time?
I think even for the people that are visiting for that meeting, a public meeting has its benefits because it's only on that subject. It would be out there in the future. The only thing, you'd have to make that decision during the board meeting, so they'd come and then they'd leave and there's no other way to, you can't have them sign up. You mentioned once they could sign up in advance, but I don't know if we could handle that logistically.
Well, I mean, for a matter of practice, the policy does require that all attendees must register their intention to participate at the meeting upon their arrival at the meeting.
Yeah, but
we don't, as a matter of practice, we know what topics are going to be more hot button topics. The average topics that we have, the regular topics that we have on our board agenda generally do not attract a lot of comment. However, if we were to ever be in a situation where there was something, similar to the gun resolution that was discussed, that was, highly political and emotional and there was a lot of interest, that may be a topic that we would want to have a public hearing on, and the board then could listen to where the citizens are at on
We
it.
could predetermine that.
Right. You know the topic, and going into that meeting then, people, we could have the stack of papers ready to go, and if we had a lot of people, we could at the beginning of that, the president could call a vote, do we want to extend this? And then we could go beyond that 30-minute period. And then if the board wants to hear it that night, the board wants to hear it. If the board wants to then schedule a separate meeting, then we could schedule that separate meeting.
So do we have to work the words in here about the board making a decision?
So item J, the portion of the meeting during which the participation of the public is invited shall be limited to 30 minutes unless extended by a vote of the board.
Oh, there it is, right in
And
front
then,
of
or
me.
unilaterally by the board president or the committee chair.
Was the vote of the board words there previously?
That's been there the whole time.
The whole time. Yeah.
Yep. Which is why we want to clarify, I think, some of the aspects of this
Yeah.
policy.
Yeah.
And that's the notion of, instead of saying we have to take our 30 minutes and divide it up, that you only get 2 minutes instead of 3,
Yep.
that would be when the decision can be made to extend it just unilaterally.
Yep.
I think
That's
that's
good.
a really good call.
Yep. And then the other item that we added on there, because we did have somebody show up to the board meeting and take over the technology, we just want to make sure that unless technology is required for the individual by the Americans with Disabilities Act. So say somebody,
down here.
somebody does not have the ability to speak, for instance, or they're not able to, to see, to read a text, whatever it might be. We wouldn't want to limit technology use in that setting, but no citizen shall utilize presentation technology during
Unless
public
the
comments.
ADA, okay.
Yep, unless they need an accommodation to do so. We can't have people, because, that should then be an agendized item on the board topic, and again, we can't take over the TVs and such.
Yeah.
So,
I think our staff is so tuned into AirPlay, and that's their way to communicate, all day long.
Yep.
That, I think the example that you're referring to is that's just a teacher tool that is, they don't even think about it as being something that would be potentially not appropriate here.
yeah, and
Well, I'm about to think it's
also to
not
understand,
appropriate here.
but also to understand the amount of time then associated with the presentation that would require a PowerPoint slide. Public comment, as people bring it up, it's generally written on a couple of sheets of paper, or you'll see somebody come up perhaps with a note card just so that they have a couple of topics. It is not something where you're broadcasting a PowerPoint.
Formal presentation.
Yeah,
Right.
and that's something that we need to be mindful of, so.
And that then would be changed to be part of the script up front, or not? Do we say right away?
Which piece
that-
you talking about?
When you talk about, you're going to have 3 minutes to speak and we're going to keep track of it, et cetera, do we say that, to speak?
Yes.
Yeah.
I would-
And not
the
to,
script can be modified.
get into a
Yep, we would
technology
work with the board-
presentation
We'd work with the board president or the committee chairs.
on how to say.
Script on how to address.
How to
that. Yep.
announce that.
Yep.
Is that being a change of policy? It'd be something that the citizens should be aware of.
Yep.
Well, once we approve
It's
it,
approved.
once this goes through the process.
Yeah, but we're not even in, we're just at a discussion level tonight, so.
Absolutely.
I think you
I like-
suggested some good things.
I like the adjustments. You too?
So we'll have this back again as a discussion item in January. Just prior to, and we'll get into it a little bit more, but just prior to that, we'll do policy first, and then after policy, we'll have the technology committee. So on that same night, we'll discuss this.
If we settled on 21st, there was some confusion the other night because the board is meeting on 8th as to whether we would meet a week earlier for the policy committee. I'm not saying we should, I'm just asking.
No,
We're going with the 21st.
We're going with the 20th.
The third Tuesday.
Yep.
That's fine.
Everybody else falls on their regular night in
Have we
January.
talked to technology about this?
Yep,
Diane?
Diane has been in
Okay,
contact with Steve.
So we are, and that's what we got here too.
That's what say, yeah. I went, as soon as I saw this, I knew that we'd have a set day, and then I started contacting Steve about the tech committee.
That's good. Okay, you've got a few words of where we feel, Joe, so that you can put that in and. Okay.
Bring that to the whole board as an information item then in January so that they
Yes,
know that we're still in
yes.
discussion. Which we're going to actually talk about, kind of the flow of the agenda in the next policy. So we've talked about the, more or less, how is the board agenda laid out? And not so much in the sense that you see items A through J in the agenda, but it's more as you start to get in the detail of what you see in an executive summary.
Yes.
And so at a board meeting, committee meeting such as ours right now, we have things listed as action items, and then we have information, and then we have discussion. And so I've been here for 6 years, and this is the third time we've talked about the flow of what these meetings look like. And we've tried to provide clarification over time, but that has different meaning. And so I think what would be proposed, I think for the ease of the board, because people ask, can we discuss this? Can we not discuss this? Is this just something for us to listen to? For the ease of the flow, I would propose that we have action items and then call it something else, information/discussion. And then everything falls under that category, or action items and then topics. And then we know that those two areas would be areas where we'd potentially be taking action. And then everything else is just information and discussion for the board. However we categorize it, we need to get away from the confusion of, can we talk about this or can we not talk about it?
I wrote an
Can you
epistle
discuss information or can you not?
Yeah.
You know?
I wrote an epistle on this about 3 or 4 years ago back with Joe's help, and it doesn't work.
So I guess what
If
we
we're
would
doing
be-
information and somebody raises a question, we are not going to say, we're not going to talk about it.
Well, exactly. I think, again, it becomes a matter of practice. That I think people that
hasn't.
want to discuss an information item have had the opportunity to raise concerns. And obviously in discussion, it means you're discussing. So yeah, it seems redundant.
So what we'd like to do, I think for the ease, is if you were to look, say, tonight at our agenda, we would be looking at maintaining item 1, general business, and those 3 items then would stay consistent across all committees. Item 2, action items, those would be the things that we would be approving. And then item 3 then would be information and discussion.
That's the way I
And we'd
like
use the term "and" because it could be both, honestly, given the way that our committees work, the flow from the committee to the board committee may discuss the topic, and that actually then may be the only information that the whole board has on the topic. So
Would have
information
that-
and
that
discussion,
happens?
I think, using the term "and" in there will make, bring some clarity to this.
It would take in everything other than action.
Yep. And then we'd have this section for other business.
And how would you word items for board or committee awareness and,
We'd just get rid of it. We would eliminate it. It would just be information and discussion.
and not even define what
We
There
it
don't
would
is?
need
be-
those.
yep.
They never were there before until we tried to clean it up. and it
Try to
didn't-
explain it.
Didn't work.
We'd make clear, though, that we would make clear still under action that those are for board or committee approval.
Right. Yeah,
but then
that's
anything after that-
important because
Yes.
you need a motion to
Yep.
go forward with it.
Anything after that, it would just be information and discussion.
Information discussion items, would you still keep the word items,
It's
do you think?
information and discussion.
Yeah, that's
Okay.
enough.
Yep.
Okay.
And then we will go ahead if the committee, if there's no objections at the committee level, this doesn't require a policy change. We can just go ahead and make that change to our templates and then bring that forward after the January meeting, after Bill has had the opportunity to read the script that discusses why we're doing what we're doing.
Yeah, that would be good. We keep trying, that's the easiest solution.
It is an easy solution. I guess I was always feeling like something has to have three hearings, it has to be information, then it has to be discussed, and then it goes for action. And this kind of can streamline it,
No,
and
we've
especially
tried
at this level,
Tried to do that, though, administratively. We have tried to make sure that things come to you 3 times as a board. Because from time to time, we as administrators have been accused of trying to sneak something through or push something through, ram something through is a term that people use. When in reality, it has been brought forward as information. It has been discussed at the committee level. It's been brought forward as action at the committee. It's been brought forward. So, I mean, really, the board as a body has had 4 times to access the information, unless there's some sort of emergency situation where we need to act quickly.
That's been pretty rare.
It is generally very rare. So we will change this.
The planetarium was one of them, because it was a timely kind of thing.
Well, that was, yeah. But that was.
But very, very rarely, you know,
But
in my
We've had more
experience.
serious ones in the area of sometimes a policy comes along very quickly, you better act on it legally.
Change the law?
Sometimes we've got something else that's going on and we wanted to get, for instance, a curriculum wanted to be done so we could get it in before the sheet goes out for
For signups.
sign up, yeah.
Yep.
So,
Well, and
I
there
think
would be
we've
nothing
been-
wrong with having something stay under information discussion for a couple months,
no,
until people feel comfortable and are ready to make it, you know, to move it to the action item category.
yeah, when we're ready. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay, that was the 0166, right?
Yes.
And eligibility of a
Is
res,
that actually in 0166?
that's just the agenda is listed.
Yeah, right, but we there didn't really have
And
a
that's-
information and discussion, so it's really not
No,
a
it's
policy
not a
change.
policy.
No, it's not a policy change. It is, you know, when you look at the board agenda that the board gets, that the citizens get, it lists on the agenda.
All those.
The policy committee, it lists our action items, our discussion items. And so what we wanted to be able to do is use that loosely as a guide and then have the discussion around what really are we doing with our executive summaries, which then drive that board agenda. So.
Okay, excellent. 5111.
Yeah, so the eligibility of resident and non-resident students. So if we go back, I think it was to September, perhaps it was early October, there was a situation that prompted the board to ask for us to look at what our language would look like around expelled students. Our practice, so if you look at this policy that's in front of you, page 2 and 3, you can see a bunch of text that is highlighted in yellow there, starting more or less with conditional enrollment. And this would be the language that addressed the conversation that the board and the committee had around, well, what if we wanted to enroll a student that was expelled from another school district? And my recommendation when we first talked about this is that we not have that as an option. That's my recommendation still to this day. If you look at item P1, our policy currently reads, if the student has been expelled from another Wisconsin public school district, the student is not entitled to enroll, period. We did not select the box that says the superintendent may choose whether to enroll the student. Instead, we have, in the event that the superintendent intends to enroll the student during the term of an expulsion order issued by another Wisconsin public school district, the enrollment must be approved by the board, period. And that is where our current language ends. We did not select that next box. We do have item 2 in our current policy. If the student has been expelled by a public school in another state or by a Wisconsin charter school, the superintendent may choose to enroll a student. That language is required. So items 1 and 2, anything that is not, under P, anything that is not highlighted is what we currently have. It has been our practice. It's been talked about at policy. It's been talked about at the whole board. It's been discussed at the Finance and Facilities Committee when we talked about doing an at-risk charter through eAchieve. The practice has been not to accept expelled students into our district. We'll work with our students who we expel, either through one format or another. But anybody from another district, we're not going to accept. My recommendation to the committee is to maintain that, but I bring it to the committee because ultimately only a school board can overrule another school board. We cannot do that as administrators, so I defer to what it is you guys'
Now,
wishes are.
so if we don't change anything, all this highlighted stuff goes away.
Correct. It's not in the policy then.
Right.
This is just brought forward to you as what's some proposed language
It could look
around accepting expelled students from other districts.
And I'm not in favor of any changes to that anyway, so.
I was going to say, I'm not an advocate for necessarily doing that either, so.
We've had a few and they've always been bad.
Yep. Yeah, it's, with eAchieve Virtual Academy, and I'd share with the committee, we somewhere get between 30 and 50 requests a year from students who have been expelled from other school districts. And if we did want to entertain that, we would have to convene approval by the expulsion panel of the board in order to do that, which more or less would mean rehearing to one degree or another what was found in those expulsions from other school districts.
It would be to determine whether or not
We would accept the
we're
kids
going to accept them
under a
because
conditional enrollment.
what we're saying is we just don't have to get to that point.
Just not even to go down that road.
I have no angst against the way we're doing it. It's been fine.
Yeah, and just as a matter of,
Got trapped a couple of times because somebody doesn't tell us, though.
correct. I believe there was a point in time a few years back where in the open enrollment process, a family had to declare if they had an expulsion on the record. That declaration has since been removed from the application. And so then it's up to the sending school district to accurately communicate what has happened during those enrollment windows. And so we go forward with our records requests. We review all of our records, and unfortunately, we had a situation earlier this year where the sending district did not disclose that, and we had to address it.
Got stuck with the,
I think that's when this discussion came
That
up
was
back
around
last
this,
fall.
yeah, going back to September.
It's just as a background, when they were looking at the at-risk charter, would this language have been necessary?
Yes, if we were to have built in an at-risk charter where that would have been a population of kids that we would have chosen to serve, we would have looked at then those conditional enrollments, probably worked out a process where we could conveniently, from a board standpoint, review those cases and make an approval or a denial of the student's placement.
we're talking about at-risk outside of the district coming into the district, right?
Through eAchieve, yep, through
It's
eAchieve.
internal, we don't have to mess with it at all.
No. But when there was talk of the at-risk charter,
Yep.
that this would have had to be in the language.
I think it was about 2 years
Yes.
ago, Rick Nettesheim and I presented an idea for eAchieve to accept students with expulsions from other school districts and place them at in the eAchieve Virtual Academy as a means to help serve those kids. The Finance and Facilities Committee that oversees contract approvals did not
That's where it got shot down.
want to go down that road, so.
And I guess my gut reaction would be, as long as that is not our goal, and it's not our plan to try to have an at-risk charter school through eAchieve, I don't think there's any need. Yeah, this is important for whoever was asking the question about it when the topic came up in September and October. But I think what we've chosen to do is covered in the policy that as it was reviewed when was the last time this was reviewed? In April of 2019.
Yep, and items 1 and 2 still, if there was a compelling enough case to want to bring a kid into the district, we still could come to the board with that. But just as a general matter of practice, the district is not going to accept kids with expulsions from other school systems.
So back to number 1, P1.
Yep.
First part, we don't have it as an option. That's the unhighlighted stuff, that's the way it is today.
Right.
So the superintendent could still ask us to look into that, right?
Correct,
Yeah.
correct. We could still bring a case to you if we wanted to, but we're not looking at conditional enrollments or
Yeah.
anything like that.
I think.
I mean, with conditional enrollments, with any expulsion, our board, as a more or less a general practice, chooses to provide services to a degree to a student who has been expelled from school. There's generally always, yep. So if it's a Waukesha student goes to the board for expulsion, generally the board orders that there is some level of educational service provided to that student. In order for us to monitor the success of the conditions of that, we have to assign a staff member as an expulsion tracker. They work as a liaison with the students and the families. They make sure that the kid is meeting conditions and such. And that person's got a full-time job doing that with Waukesha kids. So to start adding kids from outside of the district, you're starting to allocate FTE just to expulsion tracking. So.
Leave it alone.
I agree.
All righty.
Okay, we're not voting, we're just suggesting.
Right.
I think we presented to the board, whoever wanted to know what that language was, as an information/discussion item.
Yep.
Okay, let me get myself, oh, that was the last one, I guess. Okay, we have no other discussion or information items, action items, we did finish. Other business, recommendation for future committee meetings. I did have one raised to me. The question was quite simply, is there a policy, and I don't know if this would fit into the policy group or elsewhere, on air fresheners. This is coming out of the custodial staff, running into situations where the air fresheners, cleansers, fragrances are so intense that they're getting allergic reactions to it.
I believe we have that in policy, and Lynn and I will look.
Could you just track it down for us? That's all. I tried it, and I didn't come up with anything other than cleansers.
Yep, I believe
That was
that.
not at all about fragrances or allergic reaction. It would
I
seem to
believe
me
that there's something in our policy. I do remember specifically talking about that, so
Okay.
we'll look into that.
That would be enough, if we can get an answer to that whenever.
Yep.
It's not that well. I doubt if it'll be before the holidays. But that's one item that was brought to my attention. So do you have anything you want to add?
The other would probably just be the board docs, since that's,
Yep.
our planned topic
Be
for
coming up in
Yep.
January.
January
And so
meeting.
in January, we'll have a 4:00 policy committee, and we'll have regular business of the policy committee. After that meeting, adjourns, then the policy committee members, we're asking that you stick around for the technology committee, where Steve Shaloman is setting up a demonstration of the board docs platform for us so that we can see what that platform looks like from a public user standpoint, but then also what a board member would experience and an administrative assistant would experience. I asked that Sue Ettinger attend so that she can see some of the inner workings of it before we would go and make the decision that this is something perhaps that we're interested in pursuing.
That would not really be a committee meeting. That'll be like a work session?
Yeah, it kind of falls in line with what the tech committee does. They
Okay, we can
they
do
do
that.
demos and
I just-
stuff like that.
However you want to do it,
Yeah.
that's fine. So
We have had a
it'll be
practice.
Your meeting?
Yeah, we have had a practice as a district that a board member who shows up at another committee can, add to the conversation if they want to. We see that this is a topic that affects more than 3 members of the board. It also affects more than just administrators in the district. It's something where we'd have to have kind of a feel for it if it's something that we wanted to pursue. So,
Would we have like a model of how it would work then here?
we will have. Well, we'll have.
During our meeting?
No. Not during our meeting is going to be.
Ours just as it is.
Just straight
Okay.
plain old policy, and then when we go into technology, then we'll go into the actual demo
Okay.
of what board docs would look like. We've been part of the board docs conversation more or less just because
We want to
that's
pilot
where
it.
our policies are housed.
Right.
We've discussed this idea as a district for a number of years, going electronic with our meetings. Board docs is a very convenient platform to do that work, so.
Sounds right to me.
Okay.
Okay.
It's good to know that that's the format for it. And what we'll do is probably meet in this room,
Yep, we'll be here. And the reason why we want to keep that January agenda open is Neola provides us with policy updates. They may be sending us something here this week or over the holiday break, and we have policy then that we actually need to address. So we didn't want to congest our meeting with a board docs discussion.
Yeah.
And we have at least 3 topics that would be on the agenda.
Yep.
So, yeah, we would carrying over from here.
It could grow, if that's when it comes from Neola, yeah.
Yep. That's all I got.
That's it?
That's it.
Okay, with that, the meeting, next meeting is the 21st, we stand adjourned.